Okay, folks. Sorry about the slight delay there. We're going to get going now. So as I said before the break, this is going to be a very, very interesting topic. It's all about whether government can catch up with the digital world. And to help us along with that is Chuck Todd. So for anyone who's unfamiliar with Chuck, he is not only the host of Meet the Press and political director of NBC News, he's also a Miami native, I understand, and apparently an avid Miami Heat fan. Sorry.
Actually, no. The Hurricanes, it's even worse. But
did I mention?
University of Miami, it's all right.
Did I mention I'm from San Antonio?
Oh, I don't know. The Heat stuff doesn't bother me.
Oh.
I just bandwagon that. I'm like the rest of Miami. I jump on the bandwagon for the Heat.
Okay.
On and off. I'm off. Don't worry.
So now you're a Cleveland fan now?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? All right. But actually, more I'd like to thank Todd for having Chuck Todd for having the only name that I've been able to pronounce effectively today. So without any further ado, here's Chuck Todd with these panelists. Good luck, guys.
Thank you very much. I am a Miami native, and usually people say they say, "Where did you grow up?" I say, "I was born and raised in Miami," and they're like, "You don't look like you're from Miami." And I say, "And what does that mean?" And I say, "I love Miami." I've got another Miami native here. Let me introduce the rest of my panel, and I'll start with a South Florida native. You know, the Broward County business, you know. So those of us, old school Miami, we're sort of, you know, Broward's Broward. But let me...
Painful.
I know. Vivian Graubard, she is the advisor to the U.S. Chief Technology Officer, and she's founding member of the U.S. Digital Service. So part of this sort of offices that didn't exist before Obama was president is probably the best way to describe it, and all of a sudden they're incredibly important in the administration. She currently advises the CTO on matters involving all things having to do with digital. She has a degree in IT. Here's more important, she was named to Time's 30 Under 30 of people changing the world, which really means she's part of the millennial generation that's in charge of you know, saving the country from the baby boomers who screwed it up. Because us Gen Xers do not take any of the blame here.
Nope.
Next to, I'm going right down the line here, is Miguel Escassi. I hope I got that correct. He's the executive director of the Chilean Digital Agenda for the government of Chile, reports directly to the president of Chile. He has spent a lot of time here in the United States. Before getting this position, worked a lot in the private sector, specializing in telecom and various IT industries here in the United States, Latin America, really all over the world. Has had clients including AT&T, Microsoft, Telefonica, Cisco, National Grid, you name it. A master's in engineering from the University of Seville, fluent not just in English and Spanish, but Italian, and he claims a working knowledge of Portuguese. So basically, he is Latin America right here. And finally, last but not least on the panel is Megan Smith. Megan is the current, she's fairly new to the job, right?
September. Yeah.
September. The United States, for the government, the Chief Technology Officer in the White House Office of Science and Technology. Been doing it now, not quite a year. Before the White House, she came from Google, a VP at Google. Has spent a lot of time on new business development there, including serving as the vice president for Google X, and co-founded their communication innovation project Solve for X, which some of you have probably heard of. I know I have. Before that, she's previously served as CEO of Planet Out, the top LGBT online community back in the day when we spent a lot of time on AOL, Yahoo, and MSN. But we don't do that anymore as much, right, these days. Anyway, we have a great panel all talking about how do we make government digitally savvy in the 21st century. So call me a skeptic, Megan. I think this is, let's start with how far behind, if the whole idea is can government catch up, the implication is obviously we're far behind. How far behind is the US government when it comes to digital technology?
You know, it's an interesting question. There's a range where we are because some parts of the government are incredibly far ahead. I mean, we do have a rover on Mars. Right?
And, and by the way, when you're talking government, all things federal government.
Yeah.
We're not talking about state and local, which I do want to get into later in the panel.
Sure.
Go ahead.
And actually, they really overlap because open source and new organizations like Code for America and others coming together, as well as movement that the local folks are making. But you know, what you find is a mix in government where some people are doing great, you know, NASA and others, and then some folks are just far behind in terms of digital services. And we saw that with the president with healthcare.gov, because here you had an extraordinary policy idea, business model, set of partnerships, got through the legal side of that, put it into law, and then the website was going to take that policy down. So what happened for the president, I think, is that he realized and the teams realized that we were missing a set of Americans in government, that we had developed a habit of the team came to the table and decided what we would make, write it all up and throw it over the fence to our awesome contractors, but they're not connected. And so you end up with the wrong thing, maybe things that cost too much, et cetera, instead of having a few members of that team on the team. So I think that's the big change that has happened. And so we're bringing like the founding of the United States Digital Service, the founding of the Presidential Innovation Fellows, which are like White House fellows who are techie. There's 28 of them in government right now in 11 different agencies. And the way to think about this, I think, is if you had a lawyer, they would often come to government at some point. They would go to private practice and they might clerk, in the judicial system. And that's a pretty normal thing in their career path. Or an economist might be doing academic work and then might come into government. And we've been doing that with our scientists, so the AAAS fellows and NSF fellows, and they flow into government and back. But we haven't been doing that with our digital technologists, and as a result, the websites and mobile services and the things that the American people are using really suffer. And the back end
basically
suffers.
what you're saying is, I'm going to shorthand this, the best and the brightest in the industry of tech are not somehow finding their way into government naturally.
They're either not finding their way into government or they're in government but they're buried and they're not at the lead table. And so they're trying their best to do amazing things from within, but they can't lift up. And so, we are the country that makes Amazon, Facebook, Twitter. I mean, there's astonishing, lead the world products. Those Americans need to be in government. Our government will be as good as the people who show up. And so, I'm really encouraging my colleagues from sort of Silicon Valley style development to show up and be in government in rotation. You don't have to stay forever.
How do you incentivize them? Because a lot of Silicon Valley's incentivized by money.
Sure, and I think
obviously
it's similar.
Government, we don't want it to be incentivized by money. It's not the way it was designed.
I think it's similar to lawyers. Like I said, you would go do judicial clerking. It's an honor to be asked to work, for a Supreme Court judge or another kind of judge, and then you go to private practice and make a bunch of money and do interesting things there. So I think the same thing is true for tech. Vivian is really, part of this amazing emergent group of young people with talent coming into the U.S. Digital Service, which our team actually was a big part of architecting, and now Tony Scott is here, the federal CIO, reporting into him and embedded all through government. The teams are honored to come. And one of the things, Alex McGilvery, who was the general counsel of Twitter, he's kind of a coder lawyer, he came with me in September. He said our goal from a culture perspective, our hope was, and I thought it was a great way to frame it, that a techie, a very talented techie would say to you credibly, hey, I have a job offer from fill in the blank, Dropbox, Twitter, Facebook, and it's really exciting, I'm gonna do this. I also have an idea for a startup, and my friend wants to do it with me, and she's this, and so-and-so wants to fund us, and I'm thinking of joining the VA digital service and working on the American veterans and making this new. And then that third thing would be an incredibly real thing to say, and that people would be honored to choose amongst those three, and in fact, the VA would win.
And obviously, we're not there yet.
We're not, that's not true.
Oh, okay, I was just going to say, let me get Vivian
should talk about it, yeah.
Yeah, let me get Vivian here, and then Miguel will get to you, but is that true? It's true for you. How is it true for you, and how do you get more millennials to say, you know what, I don't want to go join this startup. I want to make it so, and we're using the VA, we've been using this behind the scenes. I have this idea in my head that the VA scandal was as much a technology issue than anything else, that the private sector wouldn't have allowed it to happen, just simply, there would have been more warning signs and it would have been fixed faster.
We may think that, we don't know.
Right.
We won't know, right? As I was saying before, a lot of this is a technology implementation issue, and it's not so much the technology itself that is suffering. Going back to how we are recruiting people, when we first started this in 2012, and we really got started with the Presidential Innovation Fellows, which was the test bed for the United States Digital Service. So we had a hypothesis that we were missing outside talent from the private sector coming into government, teaching us best practices, things that we've learned at Facebook, that we've learned at Google, that we've learned at Amazon, and applying it to how the government delivers digital services or how they, at their core, do technology. And so we thought, well, why don't we see if people from the private sector would be interested in coming in for tours of duty? And they can be short, they can be 6 to 12 months. And we pitched this idea to the president. He immediately got it. He thought it was a fantastic idea. And in May 2012, we launched the Presidential Innovation Fellows. And Todd Park and Steve Van Rokel, who were the CTO and the CIO at the time, went out, made this call to action. They said, we have these 5 projects. We want you to help us work on them, apply. And you're right, we can't offer the same pay that Silicon Valley or metaphysical Silicon Valley will offer. We don't have refrigerators stocked with delicious snacks and food. We don't do on-site dry cleaning, stock options.
You don't have to pay your taxes for 2 years. You come with it. No,
but what we found is that people were really driven by the mission. Yeah. And for the Presidential Innovation Fellows, the first round, within 2 weeks, we had over 2,000 applications. We went into the 4th round, and this past August was really when it kind of, that pilot that came out of the CTO's office became a reality in building the United States Digital Service. We had tried it a few times, and we said, well, why don't we try this again? And since then, we have Mikey Dickerson, who's the administrator of USDS. He was formerly at Google. He was on the healthcare.gov turnaround team. We have Eric Milland, who was the director of operations at Twitter, who was one of the first employees at Amazon. The people who are incredibly talented, Parisa Tabriz, they call her the security princess at Google. She oversees privacy for Google Chrome. Really talented people that want to work on really difficult challenges, things that are meaty and things that are impactful, and want to apply their skill. And it turns out if you ask them, they will come.
So move over Peace Corps. This is Tech Corps.
Yeah.
Kind of nice. Miguel, let's start with the question that I started with Megan. How far behind you came into this process for Chile? And from the outside, I would assume Chile is in a much better shape technologically than most other South American countries, probably a little farther ahead. But is Chile behind?
Yeah, so first of all, let me just say that it's our pleasure to be here, especially in the eGov Summit. I think it's fascinating that we have the opportunity to contrast the different speeds of digital transformation that we have in the Americas, and just sharing best practices between the North, the Central, South America, because different countries have different priorities. When we talk about digital transformation, it's actually a very broad topic. It's not only the web services or the applications, that's at the end of the road. It comes by changing the mindset of the decision making or the policy making. And that, different priorities for different countries. Chile, for example, since the 90s has been investing a lot on infrastructure. Our connectivity, the penetration of broadband, for example, is really healthy, it's around 70%. It doesn't reach everyone. We can talk about that later, but this is an important focus for us, which is making all the digital opportunities available to everyone, not only just a section of the country. But what I mean is, in terms of infrastructure, we are good. In terms of public services, we've been developing very innovative initiatives. Even from the economic development, there's a Startup Chile is a program known worldwide to foster digital entrepreneurs. Now, what we need to go is to the next level. Now is the time to actually basically exploit the full potential of technology. Are we using it? Are we using for creating more jobs? Are we using to dynamize, make more sophisticated our economic sectors? Chile, for example, is very big on mining, very big on agriculture. Are we actually increasing the competitiveness of our industries by using technology? Maybe we are, but just slightly. We're just starting on doing it. So this is a big focus on doing it. Are we also trying to focus on the small and medium businesses? This morning we heard a lot about the importance of doing that. Not yet. We are trying to do it. So it's a question of covering the basics. I think they are. But it's a question about taking it to this next level. And this is what we are instilling this new impulse called the Digital Agenda 2020 for the country.
Obviously, part of this is sometimes, when you're dealing with governments, you're dealing with the expectations of the people you govern.
Exactly.
So looking at it from that prism, do you feel as if Chile's technology is filling the needs, meeting the expectations of the public right now?
Well, that's a critical question, because in Chile in particular, we believe that there's no sustainable digital strategy without the participation of each stakeholder involved. We could do whatever we want, but in 4 years we're going to change all the game, then we lost 4 years. So we want to make sure that we are actually incorporating the academics, the university world, the private sector, the international organizations, the civil society, citizens, and we are working with them to understand what are the challenges, how technology impact their daily life, how we make better companies with technology. We are listening to them, we are actually gathering what they need to tell us, and we have basically formed a public-private council just to make this sustainable in time. Because I think the interesting thing here is not only do it in the beginning, in the design of the policies, but also doing a jointly effort during the execution, and even when the results come, sharing also the impact of it.
Right.
And maybe this is when we realize, well, we did a country effort, but we failed. And maybe we have to refocus and invest in some other things. Or we say, well, this was a very successful policy, for example, in electronic commerce, for example, for small businesses, but we have to scale up. We need to put a stronger bet on it. This is only going to be done through evaluation, through monitoring, through assessment of the impact for the people, and then by joining together a process of synchronization with the next challenges that for sure will come in the next years.
I guess, Megan, similar question to you. I feel like that part of the issue with healthcare.gov was the public, in this case, might be ahead of where the government is capable technology-wise. Their expectations of how technology should work is their interactions with Amazon. And the president used to use Kayak as an example. It's got to be just like, so you set this bar. Does that make your challenge? Does that make it a tougher challenge for you as you scale up the government digitally?
I think the key is what we're doing is leading with people. So the talent who knows how to build this kind of a product, this kind of a service, and as Miguel's talking about it, it's a broad range. Right. And so it's both the designer and developer and the person who's building needs to have that technical skill. They also need to have user interface design, customer, sort of user experience. We have some behavior scientists, right, as well as marketers and policy folks, that whole cross-functional team you would have. And then you really are talking very much, as you said, with the stakeholders. So, for example, in small medium business, Administrator Contreras-Sweet was here today. So we're working on making it so could you register your business in a day in the United States? So the U.S. Digital Service is diving in with the team. That means you got to talk to a lot of great business owners and understand what are they trying to achieve. That stakeholder work.
Why did you decide that as the goal? Was that just something that feedback came, said, okay, the expectation is you should be able to register your business in a day online?
What's going on specifically with the USDS, they have about 10 major priorities that they've set and have been given that budget based on that prioritization. They're talking to a lot of people. What are the highest use services by the American people? Immigration, VA, small medium business, some of the education loan areas, lots of great areas that USDS is working on. And so prioritizing it through that. And then as we get that done, continuing the hiring and hopefully getting across all of government so it can work this way. But also, I thought an interesting point about international, because of the internet, we're incredibly connected as humanity, and it's only the beginning. And so we're able to start to work across countries in a way that's really interesting. So you were reminding me of some of the collaborations we have with the UK. So the UK has been working on startups and their big companies, but also this whole idea of scale up. And how do they help their highest growth businesses, the ones who are kind of like Google was in the day, we were, fly the plane and build the plane at the same time. How do you help those entrepreneurs, especially in the UK, where they want them to stay in Manchester and not move to London or move to the US, right? And so for us, they might be in St. Louis or in Louisville or here in Miami. We want them to stay and not move to Silicon Valley and build here. So what's interesting is, for the first time, not only can people be connected, but also you're able to use big data behind that and measure. The government has a lot of information through tax receipts, what's growing really fast with our businesses and how do we help them. And you guys are doing similar kinds of things, I know.
I want to ask you both this one question, because you both had such extensive private sector. Miguel, did you have this stereotype of how you thought digital government was working or not working when you went in, and then you got in there and said, oh, that's not it. I totally got it wrong, and similar with you, Megan. And what was it?
I think, first of all, we are citizens. So for sure, you have your prejudices, right? You have your frustrating user experience many times, not only in the public sector.
You sit there, it's like, I got this job, and I'm going to change this now, because I always had frustrating.
But I think it's good to have a drive and try to not to be conformist with the situation as it is. It's also good to acknowledge what the constraints or the limiting factors are. I think there are obstacles. I was going to say, you were talking about prioritization, Megan. I think this is a very important one, connecting to political willingness to change things. This is like in technology. There are early adopters and late adopters. Right. It happens as well in the governments and the different departments. There's people, they are convinced on how, through applying technology, they are going to deliver better results in agriculture, in economy, in education, in healthcare, you name it. There are others that they're still not convinced because of the short-term pressures and conditions actually don't let them maybe think strategically or change the way things were. So I think when you get into the government and the public space, you feel a lot of these dynamics. And I think we need to be very pragmatic. Just, you know, we need to have a strategic vision, but I think we need to strengthen the strong allies that see the power of technology, that are willing to prioritize, make it a top 5 priority for the different departments. For sure, the president in this case, we are lucky because he's extremely committed and also sees technology as a strong instrument to empower the people and to actually give more opportunities to everyone. And then when you see that, you see there's a section of the government that you can move, you can drive, you can see the progress. And there are others that is going to take longer, and then what you need to do is basically just be patient, I think, not frustrate, and just diversify. But for sure, as a TC citizen, I try to solve the challenges that we suffered before.
So Megan, biggest misconception you ended up having about sort of how...
I didn't know what it would be like, but the thing that's really great is how entrepreneurial people are. I mean, people are.
And you were worried they wouldn't.
I'm like a card-carrying optimist, so I'm not always
I love
very
it.
worried in general. But no, I don't think I had a sense, and it hadn't occurred to me to go work until I was actually in Africa. I was in Uganda and in Kenya in a similar kind of set of events as Emerge. Like all around the world, the techies are getting, beginning and in that Emerge South by Southwest kind of way, coming together, doing startups and moving. And so, I believe in that world. I didn't know whether it existed in government, and so it's wonderful to see it. We've been missing, again, I call it like IQ and EQ, I call it TQ. So the techie skill, we have incredible humanities Q, in leadership and operations and economics, and we have scientists, but we've just been missing this digital character and having that be a distant contracted thing rather than in the room. And as we change that, it really changes. I also, just in general, I'm really excited about some of the things these guys are getting done. Like Vivian works on immigration, for example. And I think we really need Congress to enact legislation. And we need them to do that. But at the same time, there were a set of things that the president found he was able to do, which he did. And he's continuing to look for those and do those. But actually, interestingly, one of the hard things in immigration is actually being a customer of trying to be a new American or to visit us. Both from an economic perspective, having our visas, visitors bring a tremendous amount of money when they're visiting as tourists. How can we make that simpler, like Singapore and other countries who are doing that? But also the user interface work that these guys are doing on our immigration experience is brilliant.
Let me, Vivian, get into this. So how do you make this? So do you look at it almost as a customer service? You sit there and say, okay, what is it that this is how it should work if we were a private business and what the expectations would be. So this is a goal, and then you deliver it to the tech team and say, build something that will get you to this? Is that how you view your job?
We are much more closely embedded with the agencies. Okay. So I would say that I spend a few days of the week actually working at the Department of Homeland Security. And so for a long time, it has felt like the White House or people at a more senior level, you're delivering policy directive.
And this is just USDS you at DHS because you're working on immigration.
Because I'm working on immigration.
But there's other people that have the similar relationships with other agencies.
So anyway, our team at the Department of Education works out of the Department of Education. Our team that was doing the discovery sprint at the Small Business Administration was showing up there every single day. And it's important to work side by side with the contractors on the ground, with the people that are responsible for implementing the policy, and even with senior leadership. And so it's a little bit of both. It's working both with leadership and having that buy-in, that air cover to do the thing that we know is right. And it's also necessary to work with contractors and with the policy folks on the ground to teach them how we can do things in the same way that the private sector is doing them. So at the same time that we launched the United States Digital Service, we released the Digital Services Playbook. And it's 13 plays that is almost like a checklist of things that everyone that is building or delivering a digital service should think about before they actually start. Some of the things are really common sense, and they're very commonplace in the private sector, but we hadn't really thought about in government before. So we saw this at healthcare.gov. 85 contractors, a lot of policy people, a lot of staff. Who is the one person that's in charge? Often you can't find that one person.
Well, that was the biggest
that
problem.
was the biggest problem.
There was no CEO.
Yeah, but it's not so much, it's the product manager.
The product manager,
Product
right.
manager,
So
yeah.
it's like the owner of
The CEO of the product.
policy, not of the policy, of the implementation. And so one of the plays is have one person who is in charge.
I have 3 chapters in my book about this issue.
We also
Looking for the implementer, the search for the implementer, which government did identify. They knew they needed to find somebody, and they just could never find somebody.
Yeah.
That's what you hear.
Right. So one of the questions that we ask, and it's not us. Somebody needs to be identified within the agency that is responsible for the implementation of that policy. But then there are other plays like build with the user. So we often think that maybe we know what the best thing is to build. And as Miguel was mentioning, you go out into the public, you go out into the field, and you say, what are your greatest pain points? What do you find difficult, confusing about this entire process? How can we make it more human? And so we've spent time on the ground at the Nebraska Service Center, where adjudicators are actually going through and processing immigration benefits. But we also have spent time with people who are going through the process themselves, right? Because there are 2 customers here. There is the public, the individual that is going after and trying to access this benefit, and then there is the person who has to adjudicate it on the inside. And if we make the front end really, if we design it really well, if we make it really easy to use, if it's beautiful, if it looks like a kayak or a Facebook or something that we're used to, that's great. But then if it gets to the adjudicator on the back end and they don't have a simple way of getting through the process or receiving the information, well, then you get a 6 to 8 month backlog to receive a green card.
Healthcare.gov was a pretty good consumer interface.
Right.
Horrendous for the health insurance company, supposedly. The interface.
Yeah, and in this case, it would be more, maybe not the health insurance companies, but the are you eligible for this? The person who stamps approved you are eligible for this thing.
Miguel and Megan, is it easier to, I guess, walk me through the process of when you decide, and when you have this digital government change you want to make, where you can fix it or you just scrap it and start over? And I guess that there's some, with technology, right, you always have to make that decision. Can you add on an update, an upgrade, or do you scrap and start over?
Yeah. So I think it depends. So before, at the beginning, we were talking about federal versus local versus, in Chile it's exactly similar. So I think we made a lot of progress in terms of central digital government or e-government. But for example, when it comes to the local governments, we still have a lot of room to do. So now that we do this in 2015, probably the way we're going to do it is with the best practices available. Countries like Estonia, for example, they started from scratch recently. So they're starting to do the golden technology.
They're kind of leapfrogging since they get to start late.
Leapfrog.
Yeah.
But for example, we cannot afford that with the central government because there's a lot of legacy, and everyone involved in technology know the implications of legacy in terms of OpEx, in terms of the integration of the different platforms. But what you can do is in the new entities that you start digitalizing, then you start applying the best technology or the easier, the more friendly front end possible. And then in those where you already have a lot of road already kind of in your baggage, right? So then I think it's a question of improving. And more than the technology itself, I think it's a question of improving the processes we do. Right. You were talking about empowering the people. You were talking about, we call it the GovLab, but it's basically identifying the challenges, identifying the requirements from the users of the services, and then they started all together creating solutions which are more effective to people. That you can do, but that is changing the way you do things. It's changing the process. Has less to do with technology and more with the human interactions, with the processes and how you change things.
Yeah. And Megan, this is where our politics can sometimes get in the way of innovation. And I say this because you're trying to change and innovate something, but if we scrap a program completely because we're going to redo it, there's somebody who feels as if they're being shut out from this program.
Sure.
Something like that.
and that can happen. What I was going to say about some you were talking about, there's also, there was a great example, the Code for America team, which is a nonprofit that has brigades in different cities and co-invests with the cities and cross-shares code at the local level. One of my favorite things they did had to do with food stamps. And they found in this pretty big system that was using legacy systems, there were a bunch of things both in the operations and the tech that were causing people to get kicked out. The notices were confusing, the language, there were a bunch of things that came together to cause that to exist. They did a simple fix of just having a text message. So many people have mobile phones now. So a quick text message that says, you're about to lose your benefits, did you mean to do this? And so it gave you a way to immediately call back rather than try to go through a more cumbersome system. So sometimes there's just a little lightweight change, and it really helped a lot of people that needed that very much.
Vivian, she brought up mobile. Is everything now about digital government a mobile? Is it just the way I feel like I look at the way we think about how are we innovating as a content provider in news? We're always mobile first. Are you thinking that way now at digital?
Absolutely. So 18F is the digital services unit at the General Services Administration, and because they are a fee-based organization, they almost act like consultants, internal consultants to government. So they are able to provide their services at a cheaper cost, and they're internal to government. They're your people. And everything that they build is mobile first. And it's not a matter of building mobile apps, but websites that can be viewed from your smartphone and that work seamlessly. And so if you look at a website that is mobile first and compare it with one that is not, visually there's a difference. And so that is absolutely something that we're thinking about. How can we notify people of their case status for different benefits via text message or via an email that they can open up on their phone, and if they need to take action on it, they can. So really thinking about how to make it as easy as possible. One thing that I will say about the Code for America food stamps project, because it is my favorite project, is one thing that we found, because we're thinking that you have to look at data, you have to make data-driven decisions and policy decisions. One thing that Code for America found was that an extremely high number of people were going grocery shopping at 12:01 a.m. on Thursday. Who goes shopping at midnight on Thursday? People that are hungry. People that have just had their benefits refilled and need to go. Their card gets refilled, and they have children and families that they need milk and waffles and eggs for breakfast, and they want to have it ready at 6:30 in the morning when their kids get up for school. And then you hear that and you think, is there a time that makes more sense? Is it maybe Friday evening so they can go shopping on the weekends when they're not working?
Get a full night's sleep.
Right, so they can get a full night's sleep. Yeah. We're talking about people who are often working, the graveyard shift late at night. How can we use the data that we are seeing to make better decisions about how we are delivering services?
So you can let people talk about mobile. I mean, how mobile oriented, or do you feel like technology getting in your government?
I think it's a game changer. To be honest, especially for the people that they didn't have the chance to be in this digital.
They didn't have the big personal computer or whatever.
That's correct.
All of a sudden now,
suddenly
you got a 95% reach probably, or 100% reach.
Well, but that's exactly the opportunity we are trying to embrace here, right? So which is now smartphones penetration is going to scale up very quickly. So we have probably 5-6 million people that before they couldn't use the benefits of technology, and now they're going to probably receive their benefits in their phone. They're going to have alerts so that they can act properly. They're going to have a different interaction with their governments. They're going to express themselves. They're going to start being real citizens, as the other people that had access to technology has been doing for years in the country. But it's not only about the public services. I think it's a broader opportunity for smartphones. Why can't you have, for example, information about how to start a business? Maybe it's a small business, but you have the information how to register in one day your business. How you can actually understand that there's a public Wi-Fi space where you can connect your phone in your local community. How can you actually have an e-learning course for your kids because you are interested in giving them an opportunity for languages, for example. All these new opportunities were not available to people now. So this is what we believe that is going to happen in a question of months, a real opportunity to scale up the number and the quality of the services we are providing to the citizens.
So we have 5 minutes left, and I want to get to the sort of like Go ahead and finish, and then I want to get to sort of like, okay, what's the biggest change that we're going to see in the next 5 years?
Just a really simple example. You were talking about foreign languages, and it's not just the government providing, but there was this fabulous, I guess he's a superintendent in a rural area in Georgia. And so, connectivity had come to the schools, and he was able to do devices. I think Miami-Dade is at a point where they're almost one-to-one here with devices with the kids. So as this comes, we just announced some great content. But what he had done was he made it so, you always have a problem in the summer where kids, fall backwards.
Right.
And so he said any kid could keep their computer if they took one class. And then he also did something where in his jurisdiction, you could, I think there was 1 or 2 language teachers, so just those options. And so instead, so they could be more like you, the kids were able to, if they kept a B average, they could skip first period and take an online language class. And so all of a sudden, all these rural kids are taking Chinese and Arabic and Japanese and just to sleep in, but to have this experience. So you can think really broadly about opening up anybody's opportunity to do services. And the other thing that's going on also is just the opening of data. Of course, the U.S. Geological Survey and our mapping data is the basis on which all of the mapping industry, billion-dollar industry is sitting. The NOAA data, on which all of our billion-dollar weather industry sits. And so the president's opened about 120,000 data sets. We're seeing it all over the world, all of our colleagues releasing these data sets that have been constructed and built with government money, taxpayer dollars all over the world. And getting that available for our incredible developers to do civic tech work and commercial tech work and offer great services out of that. It's a very exciting time.
All 3 of you sort of credit your bosses, meaning the presidents, the 2 presidents who we're talking about, as sort of championing this a little bit. I know that the president's very tech savvy. This is not, just, and generationally, he should be. He better be. He's, in some ways. If you didn't have that, do you think you would even have your position or your position? Is it important that that this come from the top down? Just sort of, he is, I know he uses a lot of apps. He loves his iPad. He loves his. Does that matter? Do you think, that you need that sort of president that they experience the technology themselves?
I think it's incredibly important because your president, who I've met her, is incredible. They set an expectation. We were with the CEO of Amex, and he was saying that for Amex, constancy of values and constancy of reinvention were the 2 things they were trying to do. And I sort of think, with government, we want to keep those values, those amazing American, Chilean values on which these incredible democracies are founded and what we care about. And as we evolve, and learn, we get to the point where we do that. But at the same time, we've always been a tech-forward country. George Washington founded the Army Corps of Engineers before the founding of America. And
that was, you could argue that's a version of IT.
And you can look across,
Miami
Franklin
exists because of the Army Corps of Engineers. I always say, our canal system,
Yeah, they wear that. Have you ever seen their uniforms? They have a little fort. It's a bunker fort. It's the first thing they built. So we as a country have always been tech forward and kind of going up and down in waves, but you always come back to it. And I think that, this president sees the potential of the internet and the network connectivity that we have for not only delivering services, for empowering businesses, for engaging better with the American people. You're seeing some adaptation. Sure. Jason Goldman just came from Twitter and Medium. But also now we're working very much on how do we get more of the American people included in the innovation economy. And I know Chile is also working on that, which I think Emerge is very much about. How do we get more of us in, the tech jobs pay 50% more than the average American job. There's thousands, 500,000 of them open. How do we get more people into this kind of experience? And also bringing the innovation style to all of our industries that the tech world has.
Yeah, I fully agree. So I think it's really important because at the end of the day, what we are talking about is a cultural change.
Right.
It's doing things differently in our daily lives. And that also affects to the decision makers in the government. So if an average citizen sees the president using it, seeing a value, then they say, well, this is also for me. At the end of the day, the presidents are representatives, and they mirror what the average citizen has to be in their countries. So I think in this case, President Bachelet has been really empowering the digital policies, but with sense. This is exactly what I think it is extremely important for her. It's not technology is not the objective.
Right.
It's not the goal.
Right.
Exactly.
It's just a mean. It's a tool. It's just an instrument to get there. So what is important is that we align the political priorities, in our case, the education with quality, healthcare, economic development, transparency and empowerment of the people, gender equality, which is also really important, that we are doing a lot of actions, how we use technology and how we show the results for everyone by using technology. This is, I think, what the president has to be a role model for the rest of the country.
All right, let's future cast here with the last question. What's the big 5-year, something that'll be changing in our relationship with government digitally in 5 years that we'll look back and be like, wow?
So our plan is to grow out kind of a digital service core, so digital service teams within each of the 24 CFO Act agencies. So those are the big names that you know. In the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Education, the Department of the Interior. So in the President's FY16 budget, we have asked for $105 million to be spread across these 24 agencies to help build these teams. And that's really a way, going to your previous question, the support from the President has been incredibly valuable, the most important thing that we could have asked for. Now we need to institutionalize it so that it
the
can
next
exist.
Administration, it
Right.
has to be. It
right.
is. You can't undo it.
We need the quick wins. We need to show that this is of value. We need to embed these teams inside the agencies. And so my hope is that 5 years from now, we'll reach that place where joining the United States government as a technologist of sorts will be something of prestige, will be that third option that people actually really consider and really say, wow, you know, going to join the VA digital service team, that's really impressive. That's really impactful. And so that's what I hope to see over the 5 years.
What's the big 5-year change that you hope will wow us?
Yeah, so I think in exact products or result programs is hard to predict because the pace of technology changes so fast. For sure, there's going to be a big difference in terms of how small and medium businesses use technology in e-commerce, for example. I think it's going to be a big change in how we apply technology in healthcare system to have better diagnosis to the people, to have the specialization of doctors available all over the country. I think there's going to be more opportunities for creating new jobs, startups, also to make our industry more competitive. And also there's going to be a big change in how teachers teach in the schoolroom. So I think there's going to be a use of technology and digital content as a change of mindset. But I think more than that, I think what is going to be totally different is the way we are doing things, as you were saying, in terms of institutionalization of the way we do things. What we are committed is to say that our digital plans, our digital agenda is going to be a continuous one, one that we are able to synchronize with the new challenges and that we are going to do with all the stakeholders involved. So that commitment means that in 2 years, 3 years, we measure and the impact is not as we expected, we need to change things. And I think this is something innovative, this is something new, and if we instill this culture of collaboration and synchronous assessment of what the impact we are doing for the people, then in 5 years we have changed things.
What's your 5-year wow?
Yes, I agree with all of this because I believe very much digital, very much things like precision medicine, all of that is coming and incredibly important. I think a big thing that I'm really excited about is you can kind of see it in the baby steps of Wikipedia, how we as a humanity learn to collaborate at a whole other level. You know, a simple one, I was in the Department of Agriculture with Secretary Vilsack, and up on the wall were George Washington Carver and Secretary Wallace, who started the ag extension programs together. Now there's 2,100 ag extension buildings across the country where farmers have met and done agriculture things. Those are perfect places to be innovation spaces, you know, to include the rural community and the rural youth, everybody in on this game, just like our startup centers that are across, you know, at the university, we have the open ideas spaces. So this nexus places where the American people, the Chilean people gather to help each other, whatever our passion is.
And government ends up being a facilitator, because right now it hasn't been as much.
Yeah, so we move out of sort of more of a parental role and much more into a platform role where we're angel investing, venture capital investing in these extraordinary people who are collaborating together to do things, and we can see these things that will help each other and share them, and then use it, leveraging government both for the high end, you know, the rover on Mars, and that science funding, and that tech funding, and also for the safety net to make sure those who need help at any given time will get that.
Well, I have to pause there. It's kind of nice to have a panel where you talk optimistically about efficient government, right? I have to say, I feel optimistic about government. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks, Chuck. You guys stay where you're at, but Megan, you need to hyperbole on your shoes and run.
And run, okay.
I don't think
You're on live
I think you have to
TV
walk
in
fast.
like, this is what I was saying,
She's
you're on
got
live
10
TV
minutes,
in
I
a
think.
few minutes.
Yes.
Okay, bye
So
guys.
exercise, run.
Bye, Megan.
Bye. Thank you, Megan. All right, great job. Yeah, hyperbole is coming in 2 years. No. Okay, so so fantastic, incredible insights, super stuff. Thanks a lot, panel.